Hello everybody, today I'm going to be telling you about a little bit of what I've been doing over the past couple of weeks. I have been diving into the world of making your own programming language. My language is called Robin, and it's a functional first programming language, and the goal is to have a C and C++ sort of style and syntax, but really have functional programming first and foremost. And instead of relying on modads, like in Haskell, to enforce that pure functional programming, we'll use different scopes to broaden or stricten the abilities. This is important because a pure function is thread safe. So if you know something's pure, you know there's not going to be any deadlock. And pure functions, it's a different way of thinking, a different way of programming, and it's really beneficial for code clarity too. A couple of the key ideas. We want pure functions as the baseline, and then explicit scopes for side effects, like an IO scope if you want to use input and output, and a state scope if you want to change the state of a variable. If there is something going wrong in the compiler, at compile time it'll throw an error. So if you're not using input and output within an IO state or IO scope, there will be an error thrown. And the goal is to have a familiar C++ kind of style, which will make it less intimidating to get into a functional programming language. Then, of course, have nested scopes to increase or decrease the abilities within your code. And then we have a simple little hello world. You may notice that it doesn't quite look like C++ yet. That's because this was the grammar I came up with right at the very beginning. And now that the basic functionalities are implemented, I'm going to be going back and making it look a lot closer to C++ with its function definitions and the way functions are used. Alright, let's just run our hello world. There we go. We have hello world. How this program works is it tokenizes, parses, and generates C++ code. That's actually what we get right here. Then it compiles this C++ code, and that's the binary that we're running. So now I'm going to sort of compare it to Haskell. In Haskell, to run hello world, we have our main, and in the main we define that there will be IO, which is a monad which allows this IO side effect. And in our programming language, Robin, instead of a monad, we're using these scopes. Maybe a more finalized grammar would look something like this, where it looks a lot like C++, output, the functions, and the main definition looks a lot more like C++. Now, here is an example of some Robin code. And you may notice that we're trying to run an output command outside of an output scope. Now, let's just run that and see what happens. We get an error. We must have an IO scope to perform IO actions. And that makes sense, because this is input and output outside of an IO scope. We also have a pure scope definition. And that allows us to make sure there's no opening and closing of different side effect scopes within that pure scope. So let's say we want to have an IO scope in here. This should fail because there's a pure scope which would enforce everything within these curly brackets must be pure. Let's run this again. And we see that there is an error. We cannot open an IO scope in a pure scope. We also have a little HTML page to show the progress of the grammar implementation and a little bit of the regex that we're using to define integers, floats, characters, bools, etc. Everything is green is implemented. Everything in red has been implemented, but is looking to be changed later. And yellow, there's an implementation, but instead of a string or a value, which further gets broken down, it's just a single string literal or a single value like 0. Hope this recap of what's been made into Robin so far has excited you and shown you a little bit of what functional languages could look like in the future. Soon, I'll be giving more future updates in this programming languages, and I can't wait to show it off then. Thanks for watching.